Well, thank you, John. So this is a little bit different of a Sunday morning, and our kids are here today. So I'm going to invite children, and if there are parents who also want to come down with your kids and kind of sit around in here, we've moved out some space and made some space for you to do that, so everybody can be kind of spread out, but be over here because I'm going to read a story this morning. And here's a story that we're going to read together for our kids. Come on, Aiden, you can come in and sit down. You're not just kidding. It's all right. You're cool. But I'm a little bit kind of nervous. So, so if you kids want to come down here. Bobos, you want to come up here? Yeah, my grandson is here today. Looking good this morning, Mr. Bo. Got that sweater on. All right. All right. Hey, guys. So you're going to be able to see the pictures in the book because you're up close. I'm going to try and read it just like this so that you guys can see. But also the pictures are going to be up there. And I got to tell you, I'm a little nervous this morning because usually I don't do stories out of books with pictures. So this adds a new level of difficulty for me, all right? So I want to make sure that I do this right. For you guys. But this is a book called The Donkey Who Carried a King, and it's by R.C. Sproul. So if you, Brian, if you want to start the thing up there, then we'll start reading the book together. And I will turn to the first page. Let's see. We'll wait for it to come up on the screen up top. Does that look like the book? No. Oh, there it is. So here's the cover, right? And there it is, The Donkey Who Carried a King. And there's the donkey. His name is Davy, all right? And then, like I said, this book was written by R.C. Sproul. So I'm going to move to the first page so we can start reading the book, okay? Here's the first page right here. So one day, a little boy named Riley came home from playing with some of the other boys in his neighborhood. He was crying as he came into the kitchen to find his mother. She saw him and asked, "Riley, what's wrong?" And Riley's lip trembled, and he tried to wipe away his tears. He was 8 years old, and he didn't like to cry, but he couldn't help it. He said, "Mommy, every time we play games, the other boys pick me last, and it hurts so much." Just then, Riley's father and grandfather walked in. Riley's mother told them, "Riley has had a hard day. The other boys have been picking him last for their games." Riley's father put his arm around his son. He said, "I understand that. Sometimes I was the last one picked for the games when I was your age." Riley was surprised. "Really?" he asked. His father nodded. "Yes," he said. "I remember how much it hurt when that happened to me." Riley looked down. I think they picked me last because I'm not very good at the games that we play," he said. His father said, "Since your grandfather's here, maybe he can help you with this. What do you think, Grandpa? What should Riley do?" Grandpa thought for a second. Then he said, "Riley, have you ever heard about the donkey who carried a king?" "Yeah." The corners of Riley's mouth tipped up in a smile because he knew that he was about to hear another of Grandpa's wonderful stories. "No, Grandpa," he said, "I've never heard that story, but I'd love to hear it now." So Grandpa sat down, and Riley sat on his knee. Riley didn't feel too old for that. "You know, Riley," Grandpa started, "several years ago, I went to Jerusalem and I saw a funny sight. Lots of people on little donkeys. The donkeys in Jerusalem are small compared to the ones here in America. They only grow to be about 3.5 feet high. The sight of a grown man riding one of these donkeys made me giggle. The man had to keep his knees bent way up to keep his feet from dragging on the ground. And the little donkey the man was riding just kept right on down the street, bearing the man on his back. I want to tell you about a donkey just like that, little donkey, the one I saw in Jerusalem. The donkey in my story had never been picked for anything. He wondered whether he would be chosen to do a job. But one day he was picked for a very special task. Many years ago, there was a little donkey named Davy. He lived in a village close to the city of Jerusalem. He was too young to work, so they kept him in his pen. He had brothers and sisters, but none of them could play with him because they had jobs to do. Sometimes they carried sacks of olives for their master. Sometimes they would carry people in the community. Davy didn't have to carry anyone or anything. All he did every day was stand and wait, eat and sleep. It was boring, and Davy was often unhappy because it seemed that he had no one to play with. No one wanted him to do anything. The other donkeys who were with Davy's pen told him stories about famous donkeys in history. One had belonged to a man named Balaam. And a wicked king asked Balaam to give a prophecy against God's people. And as Balaam was riding his donkey to the place where the people of God were, the angel blocked his path, and the donkey stopped. But Balaam couldn't see the angel, so he got very angry and he hit the donkey. Oh no. And then the Lord God gave the donkey the power to speak. The donkey said, "What have I done to make you so mad to hit me?" Balaam said, "You are not treating me right." Then God let Balaam see the angel, and the angel said, What you are planning to do is wrong." When Balaam heard that, he decided not to prophesy against the people of God. The donkeys also told a story about old Barnabas, one of the older donkeys who lived with them. Years before, Barnabas had lived in the town of Nazareth. His owner was Joseph, a carpenter. And Joseph and Mary, who was about to have a baby, had to go to his hometown of Bethlehem. And Mary rode upon Barnabas' back. And when they arrived in Bethlehem, it was time for Mary's baby to be born. All of the inns were full, so they had to spend the night in a stable where the animals are kept. There Mary had her baby, and his name was Jesus. Shepherds came to the stable and worshiped the baby Jesus. They knew that he was going to be the Messiah who had come to save his people. Afterwards, Barnabas carried Mary and the baby Jesus back to Nazareth. Davy liked to hear about the famous donkeys. They did important things, and he wanted to do a big job too, but his master never picked him to do anything. But one day, all of that changed. And it happened one morning when Davy was feeling especially down because he had nothing to do and could only eat and sleep. Davy saw two strangers coming, and they spoke quietly to his owner. Davy tried to hear their conversation. He couldn't make out all of their words, but he did hear one of them say, "Because the Lord has need of him." Davy wondered what they could be talking about. Davy's owner came to the pen and opened the gate. He brought Davy and led him to the two men. "Take this donkey," he said. "His name is Davy, and no one has ever ridden him before, but I think he will do the job just right." Davy wondered, what are they going to make me do? Whatever it is, it seemed important to these men. They led Davy down the road, and soon there was a crowd, and the two men spoke to the person who seemed to be in charge and called him by his name, Jesus. Some of the people in the group put their coats on Davy's back. Then, to Davy's astonishment, Jesus got on his back. It felt strange to have someone sitting on his back, but Davy was excited too. He started to walk toward Jerusalem carrying Jesus. And as they went down the road, a multitude of people came around and put their coats and palm branches on the ground in front of Davy and Jesus. They began to sing and shout and wave the palms in the air, saying, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, even the King of Israel." Davy was amazed. What was he hearing? He thought, "A king is riding on my back? I can't believe I've been chosen to carry a king." Davy made up his mind to carry the king the best of his ability. So he stepped carefully along the path of coats and palm branches, and he tried hard to carry Jesus smoothly. After Davy and Jesus came to Jerusalem, Jesus got down and patted Davy's back. Davy watched as he entered into the temple. Davy felt very proud of himself. I carried the king, he thought. I must be a very special donkey. Look at his face. The next day, Davy's master decided that he was ready for regular work. And one of the servants put 2 sacks of olives on Davy's back and set him out to deliver them. The sacks were heavy, and they scratched Davy's back. Once or twice he got tired and miserable, and so he sat down in the road. But his master's servant tugged on the rope around Davy's neck and pulled him along. By the time Davy got home, he was very grumpy. Why did the master make me carry those olives, he grumbled to old Barnabas. I carried the king. I shouldn't have to carry ordinary things. Barnabas frowned. We are donkeys, he said. It is our job to carry things, whatever the master decided to put on our backs. Every job is important, even carrying sacks of olives. And you should do your job you should do your best to do it well. Davy said. I don't think I'll ever enjoy this kind of work. I think I'm better at special jobs like carrying important people. But Davy had to carry things every day. Sometimes he carried sacks of olives. Sometimes one of the servants rode on him on an errand for his master. Davy didn't enjoy any of it. He couldn't understand why his master was giving him such ordinary tasks. One morning, one of his master's servants led Davy to a village on the other side of Jerusalem, and as they were returning through the city, Davy saw a crowd coming. They were coming down the street toward him, and the people seemed to be shouting angrily at someone as they moved along. The servant led Davy down one of the side roads so the crowds could pass by. Davy saw the person the people were shouting out. It was Jesus, the king Davy had carried into Jerusalem amid such joy only a few days before. But now the people seemed furious at Jesus. Davy wondered about that. Then Davy noticed that Jesus was carrying something, a rough and heavy beam of wood. Jesus seemed to be struggling to carry the beam. With a gasp, Davy saw that Jesus was hurt. His back was covered with cuts and bruises, and his head was bleeding where it was being scratched by a circle of sharp thorns. Suddenly, Jesus fell down. He couldn't carry the beam any further. Davy wished with all of his heart that he could carry the beam for Jesus. He tugged the rope, but the servant held him back. The soldiers who were there with Jesus grabbed a man from the crowd, and they made him carry the beam. The crowd went down the street, and the servant led Davy away. He was confused and sorrowful. They shouldn't have made Jesus carry that awful beam, he thought. He is the king. Why did they have to make him carry it? Why were they angry? And when he got home, Davy found old Barnabas. I saw something terrible today, he said. The king I carried was hurt, and the people made him carry a big wooden beam. Why would they do that? Barnabas looked at him kindly. I remember when I carried Jesus and his mother home from Bethlehem, he said. His mother and his father knew that he would die to save his people. Someone had told them so. It seemed the prophecy has come true, and the king was carrying the beam of the cross on which he was going to be crucified. Davy was amazed. So the king was being a servant to others, he said. Yes, Davy, Barnabas said. It is a terrible thing that he is being treated badly, but what he is doing is wonderful. Davy was quiet for several minutes. At last he said, if the king was willing to carry that terrible beam, I will not complain about carrying our master's olives. I will follow Jesus' example and be a willing servant. Grandpa looked at Riley and said, until that day when Davy was picked to carry Jesus into Jerusalem, he had never been given anything to do. His master never picked him for even the easiest task, but the older boys do pick you for the games. So I'd like you to try and be thankful that you have a chance to play. Can you do that for me, Riley? Yes, Grandpa, Riley said. You're right. I know I should be thankful that I get to play, even if I'm chosen last. Good, Grandpa said with a smile. Also, do your best to be content with whatever you are asked to do, because every player and every role is important. If you are picked to do something special, don't get proud like Davy. If you are given a job that doesn't seem to be much fun, do your best at your job anyway. Remember that God the Father chose Jesus for the worst job of all, but he did it willingly to please his Father and to save his people. Wow, you're right, Grandpa, Riley said. I never thought about it that way before. Grandpa gave Riley a quick hug. That's my boy, he said. But let me tell you the rest of the story, the part that Davy didn't understand. Jesus died on a cross that day, and when he died, he gave his life to save his people from their sins. In a way, he carried their sin and their guilt. By dying for them, he took the punishment that they deserved for sinning against a holy God, the punishment that you and I deserve. He was a king, but he was a servant to his people. And do you know what, Riley? Jesus didn't stay dead. He rose again from the grave 3 days later, and he reigns forever with his Father in heaven. That's the best news of all. Riley grinned. It sure is, Grandpa, he said. He is the greatest king of all, and I want to serve him and do whatever he asks me to do, whether it's a little job or something very important. All right. The end. Boy, that was a long book. It was a good book. You know, I have another book up here, and that story reminds me of something that I read in this book one time. Actually, not just one time, but many times. It's in the book of Isaiah. See the book of Isaiah? And it's Isaiah 53, and it's about in the middle of this big book. And it says this, talking about Jesus, it said, "Surely he has borne our griefs and he has carried our sorrows." It says that we esteemed him stricken and smitten by God and afflicted, and that he was wounded for our transgressions and he was crushed for our iniquities. The chastisement or the punishment that was upon him brought us peace, and with his stripes we are healed. That's one of my favorite verses out of the Bible because it talks about how Jesus carried our burdens for us. Do you guys know what a burden is? What's a burden, Gideon? Something heavy, right? Have you ever had something heavy in your life that you had to carry and it felt like so heavy, right? What did you do with that? It was your backpack that you carried from the airport, right? But what if have you ever had like something happen to you and you were all alone and you wish somebody was there to help you with that burden? Or maybe like this, like last week I was walking out of my house and I twisted my ankle and I fell on the ground. And I was laying on the ground and nobody was there. I was all by myself. And I thought, man, I wish somebody was here to help me to get up. Think about that. Think about if you were all alone and nobody was there to help you. Or if you had something heavy or a burden and nobody was there to help you carry it. In this book, also in the New Testament, Paul tells us in Galatians that we're supposed to bear one another's burdens. We're supposed to help each other, just like Jesus helped us. Isn't that cool? So that's what the church is for. That's what all these people in this room are here for, is they're here to help you carry your burdens, like carrying a heavy backpack in the airport. So I want you to think about that that this church is here to help you guys carry your burdens. That's why we pray together, and we take your requests because we want to pray for you guys. But it also means that you guys can help carry other people's burdens. Can you think about how you might carry somebody else's burden? Let me give you 3 ways, okay? Because Luciana says no, she doesn't know. Let me give you 3 things to think about carrying somebody else's burden. One thing you can do to carry somebody's burden is you can pray for them, right? So you can come to church and and I've seen you guys do this already. You put up all kinds of things that we can pray for one another. And now I can speak to all the adults in here too. This is one way that we can carry each other's burdens, is by filling out those prayer cards so that we can be praying for people in our church as they have needs. So that's one great way that we can carry each other's burdens. You want to know the second way? Second big way is to be encouraging. My friend John sends me text messages, and they say things like, Bart, you're a good pastor. Bart, I like you. You're a good friend. And I like getting those texts from my friend John. Maybe if you don't get those texts from John, you can send him a text message saying that you would like to get encouraging text messages too. But think about that. If you said something kind or something encouraging to your sister or to your brother or to your mommy or daddy, how that would make them feel a lot better. And that's a way of carrying somebody else's burdens, because it's always nice to hear something good and positive. You know what the third thing is? Let's review. The first one is to pray for one another, right? Remember that. And then say encouraging things. And then the third way is to actually help, right? So if you had somebody with you in the airport who grabbed your backpack and held it for you, you'd say thank you. And that would be a great way of helping you carry your burden, right? So we can help one another. And that's what the church is for too. We try and help each other when we see that somebody has a need. So let's review. Let's go over the three things. We can help each other carry our burdens, just like Jesus carried our burdens, by praying for each other, saying encouraging things, and serving or helping one another. Okay? So think about those things and talk about those things with your parents today, okay?